What's up, everybody? I'm James with RC Air Shenanigans. As you can see behind me, we just picked up the FMS 70mm Viper V2, the 15th anniversary edition. We're going to do our very first full setup video and hopefully keep it short and sweet, but also long enough to cover everything. We'll cover control surface travel, transmitter setup, CG, which is center of gravity, dual rates and Expo, flight modes, and flap system configurations, basic receiver setup with an external gyro, and anything I forgot to mention. This will be just a basic setup by the book with some tips to make your maiden flight and subsequent flights thereafter more successful. If you're just getting into EDFs, or if you've been flying EDFs for a while now but never used flight modes on your flap configurations, then stay tuned, you just might learn something. Thanks for hanging out with us, and if you like the video, drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Our main goal is to just have fun. After all, shenanigans is in our name. So with that being said, let's get to it. Here's the specs. Wingspan is 1100 millimeters. Overall length is 1000 millimeters. Flying weight 1795 grams. Motor size, wing load, wing area, 80 amp ESC, and 8-9 gram servos. Okay, let's get a look at all the parts first. We got a fuse canopy, main wing, horizontal stab, vertical stab, and screws and control rods. So, not much to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, 5 main pieces to the plane and screws and control rods. This is probably the most annoying part of the whole build. You have to take 6 wires and cram them through a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch hole. At this point, you just screw in 6 screws, 4 in the front and 2 in the back of the wing. I'm not going to make you guys sit through all this either. The next step is to add the horizontal stabilizer. Just make sure you plug in both elevators and match up the wires, yellow to yellow, red to red, brown to brown. Left and right don't matter as long as you match up the wires. The horizontal stabilizer only takes 2 screws. Make sure as you set the horizontal stab that you pull the extra wire slack through the front of the fuselage. Now do the same thing with the vertical stabilizer. Plug in the rudder, make sure the wires match, yellow to yellow, red to red, brown to brown, pull the slack through, and secure it with 3 screws. Okay, so as you saw, putting together the jet was super simple. It was 6 screws in the wings, 2 screws in the horizontal stab, and 3 screws in the vertical stab. The next step, watch out, cat. The next step is to attach the control rods, the linkage rods, ball links, whatever you want to call them. That's the next step. It looks like they're all the same length, but I'll check the book. You don't want to connect the ball link side, just the side that connects to the control arm on the servo, the servo arm. And you want to connect them all on the outside, so go on the outside first, the inside being the closest side to the servo. But don't connect the ball link yet because you need to zero out the servos. And I'll show you how to do that in a bit. Okay, so I'm going to show you the first one. I don't think there's a reason to show all of them, but let's take a look at the book here. And if you see, it shows the elevator, rudder, ailerons, and flaps. It shows where to connect the horn itself. That's the part that's attached to the control surface. So this is the horn right here. And this is the servo arm. So for the basic setup, the elevator, top hole on the servo arm, top hole on the horn. Rudder, top hole on the horn, top hole on the servo arm. Ailerons, top hole, top hole. Flaps are the only one that's different. You're supposed to go in the second hole on the servo arm, top hole on the horn. So that's it. And later on, if you want to get experimental, if you put the connector in the top hole of the servo arm and the bottom hole of the control horn, it gives you more throw. Less control throw, bottom of the servo arm, top of the control horn. Okay, so you see the holes? 1, 2, 3. So drop it in the outer hole, and then you gotta kind of bend it around the S, and it's in. And now you don't want to connect this part yet, and I'll show you how to do this. Also, so you can usually do it with your thumb. I also have this set of ball link pliers. These are specifically designed for removing these ball links. But yeah, I'm gonna go through and put the rest of them on real quick and get back to you. Okay, they're all installed, and as you can see, I've just got them hanging down. And the reason that we don't put them together yet, when we plug in the receiver, then when it goes to its neutral position, it might be off. So you might have a rudder that's not centered, and it's just a fight. You don't want to fight it and have to take it apart and readjust the length. So let's go set up a receiver. Okay, so we're gonna set up the receiver. Just the basic setup, no gyro. This is a Spectrum AR620 6-channel sport receiver. And what you don't want to do, let's hope you can see that. What you don't want to do is set it up by the book. Do not do this if you have a Spectrum receiver. What you want to do is set up your receiver the way the manual that comes with the receiver says to set it up. So FMS always assumes a Futaba type receiver. That's usually not the case. A lot of people use Spectrum. So if you're using Spectrum receivers, I believe they're all the same. It doesn't matter if it has safe and AS3X, if it's just a standard sport gyro. It's always channel 1 throttle, channel 2 aileron, channel 3 elevator, channel 4 rudder, channel 5 gear, channel 6 flaps. So that's how you want to wire up the receiver, is plug those leads in according to Spectrum, not according to the FMS manual. This receiver doesn't have a gyro, so this we don't have to worry about centering it, laying it flat, or setting up safe and AS3X.
Hi everybody, Future James here in post-edit. I was rambling on here, so I'll just explain this way. Most servo leads are either yellow, orange, and brown, or white, red, and black. White or yellow is the signal wire, red or orange is the power or positive, and black or brown is 0 volts or negative. So if you've ever wondered about the S, plus, and minus on the receiver, that's what it is. When you plug in the servo leads, you want to make sure the yellow or white wire is in the S position, orange or red are in the plus position, and brown or black is in the minus position. Yellow or white are usually on the top. For Spectrum receivers, throttle goes into channel 1, ailerons go into channel 2, Elevator goes into channel 3. Rudder goes into channel 4. Gear goes into channel 5. And the open connector on the Y harness is for plugging the nose gear into the main gear. And the flaps plug into channel 6. Be careful because it could be a really tight fit getting number 6 in. There it goes. Okay. We've got a bind button and a bind port. I can show you both ways to bind it, but the easiest way is to plug in the battery, hit the bind button on your transmitter. If you didn't know, the bind port can also be power. So if you have a separate set of LEDs, or you have the reflex and you just want the one mode permanently, you can just run power straight out of the bind port. It's always on. So you can't assign anything to that. But if you need something with constant power, that's why some of the free wing planes, they have the BEC. You can just plug that BEC straight into the bind port. Let's do some transmitter setup. Obviously, this is going to be a setup for Spectrum. So I have an NX8. If you have an NX6, NX10, DX8E, some of the setup's all the same. It's all the same options, but navigating there might be a little bit different. Or an IX4, if you went crazy, you got an IX14 or IX20, IX12. You just have to find the right menu, but the setup is essentially the same. So let's get to it. I'll show you a couple shortcuts here. Okay, so if I hit clear and back at the same time, it lets us select planes. So we're going to add a new model. It's an airplane. Yep, we're going to leave it on airplane. Create. And we can come down here. Model type, we'll make sure, no, it's an airplane. So model name is FMS. And I'm just going to hit back and back. Now we'll double check. It saved it. Okay, hit back again. Aircraft type. We're going to go 1 aileron, 1 flap, because that's what it has, and the tail is going to be normal. Next. Don't need any of this. Let's select an image. Standard image. That's probably about as close as we'll get. And we'll go back. I just like to use back, so back. Now, we're going to go to flight mode setup. Switch 1. I'm going to set this to switch D. This is how we're starting with our flaps. So, switch D. Next. I think you can test it. Yeah. So, flight mode 1, 2, and 3. There we go. Back. Now we go into spoken flight mode. I like to change this so that it talks about my flaps. So if I test this right now,
flight mode 1.
It says flight mode 1. So I'm going to click on that, and I already have some user defined sounds. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to say flaps up.
Flaps up.
Okay, and then I switch into my takeoff flaps. And instead of flight mode 2, I want it to say takeoff flaps.
Takeoff flaps.
And now I'll switch into flight mode 3. And it will say landing flaps.
Landing flaps.
And that's all there is to that. The last thing we got to do is go down to trim setup. Right there. And we click on aileron, change that to flight mode, elevator, flight mode, rudder, flight mode. Now this is the last piece of the puzzle for setting up your trims on all 3 flap configurations. This is going to allow you to trim your aircraft no matter what your flap configuration is. Meaning you could have a roll when you put out your flaps and you have to trim that out. But if you don't set it up this way, when you put your flaps back up, your plane's going to roll the opposite direction. So that's why you want to do this. We don't need any more stuff here, so what we're gonna do is back out. And now we're gonna set up some switches. So let's go dual rates in Expo. A lot of people like to put this on one switch. I like to put it on 3. I like my ailerons to be on switch C. And I like my elevators to be on switch E right here. So we're gonna come down here. Switch E. Our rudder, we're gonna come down here and put on switch F. So now we're gonna go to throttle cut and we assign this to switch H. And that's this guy right here. So throttle cut on, throttle cut off. We're gonna go with the flap system. Switch, we're gonna put that on flight modes. Instead of assigning it to switch D, like a lot of people probably are used to, we're switching that to flight modes because flight modes are already assigned to switch D. And right now, I haven't looked at the book, so we'll just go, and I might have to reverse these. 100%, no elevator, minus 100. So that way, if the channel's not reversed, if the servo's not reversed, that means up is 100% flaps up, and flight mode 3 would be negative 100 all the way down. I also like my flaps to come out slower, so I'm going to change this to 2 seconds. Now we'll back up. Range test is for the maiden flight. Timer, I like to do the maiden flight at 2.5 minutes. Countdown over 25%, so that means, hear the little beep? That means the timer stops when the stick's under 25%. Next. Timer clear is my clear button right here. You could change that if you wanted to. I don't know really why you would. I like her to talk to me every minute. At 1 minute, I do voice vibe. You can set this up however you want. I like voice vibe. 20 seconds is a tone. 10 seconds to 1 second. Voice vibe, expiration, voice vibe, and every minute over, I just set to voice. Next, and I like timer reset on voice. If you change timer start and timer stop to voice, if you have an NX series and you're moving your throttle, every time that you go past that 25% threshold, just gonna say timer start, timer stop, timer start, timer stop. It gets really annoying. So I'm gonna take this SMC battery. It's 3600. Drop it in here. We're gonna plug it in. Make sure the throttle cut's on, even though we're not bound yet. Okay. And I should be able to push the bind button. The receiver flashes. And then I just hit this, scroll down to bind, yes, and bind.
DSMX 22 milliseconds, telemetry. Bind complete.
Okay, and there we go. Yeah, okay, I have ailerons and we have movement. So now, this is when I'm going to go in and adjust all my control surfaces. And we're going to check the distance. And these just thread on. So if you need to make the rudder go to the right, you just turn the ball link to the right. You just twist the end of the linkage. But
To me, that looks like it's got to go to the left in order to line up. So that means we're going to give this a couple twists to the left. Try 3 rotations. Well, that went right on. Now let me show you this up close. See how there's still a gap under here? You don't want this ball link pushed all the way down onto the horn. It needs to be able to swivel. When I got to the ball link for the right flap, I realized the flap servo was reversed. So let's take a look at how to correct that. So all I'm gonna do, instead of changing the numbers backwards, I'm gonna go to servo setup. Reverse, and we're going to go to flaps and reverse those flaps. Okay, if you've ever really wondered what dual rates are for, why you need dual rates, or how to properly set up the travel on your control surfaces, we are going to show you. So it helps to have a micrometer. So we're going to start with the elevators. And if you look at the book, it shows your high rate elevator should be 16 millimeters up and down, and your low rate should be 12 millimeters up and down. We're going to turn on our micrometer, and we are going to open it to 16 millimeters. Which is very hard to get dead on. Oh. I'm going to put the micrometer right here. Whoop. And there we go. We've got 16 up and 16 down. Check out our high rates. And for our elevator, we can leave that at 100%. So now I'm going to flick into low rate elevator. We're just going to shoot this down. Let's go to 50%. Our low rate elevator says 12 millimeters, right? 1201. Oh, look, I tightened it up. We're at 1201. Anyway, that's fine. Let's give it some elevator. Oh, way too little. And jump this up to, let's try 70. Ooh, so close. So we're going to go to 75%. And I believe we are there. Yep, okay. We've got 75% for our low rate, 100% for our high rate. And my mid rate, I'm going to put somewhere between 75 and 100. So I'm just going to say 85% is my mid rate. And I like a lot of Expo. I like it to be a smooth ride. So we're going to go, let's go with 30. 30% Expo. On each rate. Okay, now let's do the ailerons. So we'll come up here, go to aileron, and we've got it at 100%. This is my aileron rates. High rate aileron, 14 millimeters. Come on. Oh, look at that. Okay. Yep, okay. Low rate elevator or aileron is 10 millimeters. Close enough to 10. 999. 50. Well, let's start at 60 this time. Okay. Nope. See, I made a mistake. This can happen. So, we need to go to 100%. And I need to flip the switch. Now I go down to 60. A little low, it looks like. Yep. Okay, there we go. There we go. So our low rate is 65. Let's go to mid rates. And I'm going to put that at 80, I think is a good number. And I also like about 30% Expo on my ailerons usually. Okay, let's do the rudder. Rudder is 16 left and right for high rates. Oh, so close. There we go. 16. We got it. 16. Future James and post edit here. The rudders were a little higher than they should have been at 100%, so watch this. We're going to change the high rate on the rudder to 90. Okay, that's better. Okay. And we're going to go into low rates. Yep, okay. So we'll take our rudder low rates at 65. I'll go with 80% for my mid rates. And then rudder expo, I like to be a little higher, so 35 on my rudder. Now, I'm a little worried about the flap system because that's a lot of flap. But maybe that's fine for this plane. Maybe that's why they didn't put it in the manual, and maybe there's no elevator compensation needed. Let's do the CG. $90 to $95. There we go. Look at that. I got that right on. What I'm going to do, make a little indentation in the wing. Do the same thing. So I just put two little pluses. That's the CG range by the book.
At this point, you want to place the battery all the way forward, close the canopy, and test the CG by flipping the plane upside down and putting your fingers on the CG marks. If the plane tests nose heavy, then just move the battery back a half an inch, retest it, and continue doing that process until the plane balances evenly.
I like to just flip the plane over, put my fingers on the CG marks. Boop, boop. Let go. That's nose heavy, but that's on the back marks. So let's put it on the front CG marks. And we're just, well, yeah, that's probably fine. Okay, another important thing that you should do on every plane. It doesn't matter if it's free wing 80 millimeter twin A10, 50 millimeter F18, twin 64 millimeter A10, 70 millimeter Viper, 90 millimeter F22. You always want to calibrate the ESC. So I'll show you why that's important. Let's take a look at my transmitter here. And if you can see, right there is the throttle percentage, right? It bounces between 0 and 1. It's really hard to get it calibrated to 1 to 0. But
Let's flick off the throttle cut, move the throttle up, and see how far it goes before the motor engages. %. I can move the stick 12% before the motor kicks on. And I want to use all my throttle. I'm probably not going to be able to get it to kick on at 1, but it should be better than 12 or 13%. First, let's plug the battery in normal. Okay, so you heard the cell count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the beep. Now, let's unplug it. Hopefully you can hear it. It's kind of quiet. Throttle all the way up, 100% throttle. To take the throttle cut off also. No throttle cut. It sounds scary, but and that's it. So with the Spectrum receivers, lots of receivers actually, when you start that, you hear the 2 beeps that aren't normally there. And as soon as you hear those 2 beeps, you drop the throttle. So now, throttle cuts off. See that? Now I'm starting at 5 instead of 12. That's way better. You can try and get it down to 1. It's probably not going to happen. But this is incredibly important, especially if you have like an A10, something with dual motors. What this does is not only calibrate the throttle range, but it will also sync your ESCs so that they both start at the same time. When I first got the 80mm A10 from Pre-Wing, when I would advance the throttle, I would have one motor start just before the other one, and you don't want that. It can cause turns. You don't want differential thrust on your EDF. So always calibrate the ESC before your maiden flight. Hey, all right, RC Air Shenanigans out here at the Magna Model Port. We're gonna fly the Viper, the new Viper 70 from FMS, and yeah, we already know how it goes. This isn't the maiden flight. We wanted to put the maiden flight on here, but somebody held the camera the wrong way, so here's the next flight. Worst intro ever. It don't matter. Wow, where are you going, buddy? I gave it too much juice. A little bit too much juice on that one. Alright, we're gonna bring her around. I think I'm gonna turn the pattern and fly. I'm gonna go left to right.
Right.
I'm gonna bring her in, and I'm gonna go vertical.
Okay.
It hauls, man. Like it moves.
Yeah.
It's really responsive too. That's mid rates.
Jeez. If we do that again, we'll get a better shot.
I'll do like a medium speed pass. I got a little bit of a right hand turn now. I wonder what that's about.
That was good. That was good. You can fly that longer than I feel like mine can fly for like 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I know there was a lot, but we're doing a slow pass here. Here, I'll get a better run. I know that, yeah, I got time, don't you worry.
You're good. Just making me dance.
Gear down.
Nice.
It flies on rails, right?
Oh yeah.
What the hell is going on down there?